the policeman. Holmes began to look at the papers McFarlane left. "These are very interesting, aren't they, Lestrade?" he said. "I can only read the first few lines. The writing is clear, but then it gets very bad and I can't read it. Then it gets better again before it starts getting bad again. I don't understand," he answered. "Why do you think it is like that?" Holmes asked. "Why do you think it is like that, Holmes?" Lestrade said. "I believe there is a simple explanation. Mr. Oldacre wrote this on his train ride to London. The good parts were written when the train wasn't moving at stations. As the train was moving, it was harder making the writing bad." Lestrade laughed and said, "That's very interesting and very good, but I don't see how that helps our case at all, Holmes. Most people wouldn't want to write something as important as a will on a train. I feel this was written on the way to McFarlane because it wasn't very important," Holmes answered. "It was very important to Oldacre," Lestrade said, "and he is dead because of it." "Do you really think that is right?" Holmes asked. "Yes, I do, don't you?" Lestrade answered. "Nothing is very clear to me at this time," Holmes said. "Really?" Lestrade said. "I think it is very clear. When McFarlane knew about the will, he went to Norwood. He killed Oldacre and then burned the body to get the money. It seems very simple to me." "That seems too simple," Holmes said. "McFarlane is a clever man. He wouldn't kill a man on the same day he learned he was in his will. The servant also knew McFarlane was in the house. Do you really think a clever man would burn the body and leave evidence like his stick in the house and expect people to believe him when he says he didn't do it?" "Often a murderer doesn't think clearly," Lestrade said. "You know that, Holmes. He could have left in such a hurry he forgot about his stick. I am sure he was then afraid to go back and try to find it. What other explanation is there for Oldacre's death?" Holmes smiled and said, "I can think of many things. For example, a thief passing the house saw the two men in the room with the papers and thought there was money here. When McFarlane left, he went through the window and killed Oldacre." "If that were true," Lestrade began, "then why didn't he take anything?" "Well, because there was no money there, only papers," Holmes said. "You look for your thief if you like, Holmes, but I think McFarlane is the killer. He had a motive, he had the will, and the only person in the world who did not need to take anything from Oldacre's house. It already belonged to him once, the old man dead." "I only wanted to explore other options, Lestrade," Holmes said. "I never said you were wrong. I'm going to check some things at Norwood. I'll probably see you later." Lestrade left and Holmes put on his coat and said, "I am going to Blackheath." "But you told Lestrade you were going to Norwood," I said. "There were two strange things that happened, and the police only think about one of them. The first was the strange will Oldacre wrote. Why would he want to give his money to Mr. McFarlane? I want to find that out first," Holmes said. "Do you want me to come with you?" I asked. "There is no danger at Blackheath," Holmes said. "I will be fine without you." When Holmes returned from Blackheath, it was late and he was not happy. "This seems to be a difficult case, Watson," he said. "I think maybe Lestrade is right. I don't think McFarlane killed Oldacre, but the facts look that way. This helps Lestrade come to his conclusion. Did you go to Blackheath? I asked. Yes, and I discovered that Oldacre was not a nice man. I talked to Mr. McFarlane's mother, and she was afraid of Oldacre. Many years ago, he wanted to marry her, and at first she agreed. After some time, she learned that he was not a very nice man, and that he was unkind to his animals. She changed her mind and decided not to marry him. This made Oldacre very angry, and on the day Mrs. McFarlane married Mr. McFarlane, Oldacre destroyed her picture and sent the pieces to her in a hateful letter. If the police hear of this, they will really think young Mr. McFarlane killed Oldacre. When Holmes finished talking with Mrs. McFarlane, he went to Norwood. He had drawn a simple plan of Oldacre's house and garden. The garden was very big, and the fire was a long way from the road in the back of the house. Lestrade was not there, but another policeman posted there showed him everything he wanted to see. There were some pieces of Oldacre's clothing where the fire was, along with some burnt pieces of an animal or a person. I'm not sure. I examined everything carefully, but I didn't find anything new. There was a little blot inside the room with the papers and two men's footprints on the floor, he said. On the table were a lot of papers, and some were closed with red wax. There was also Oldacre's bank book laying there. I was surprised to see the amount of money listed in it. There was very little actually. Certainly not enough to make Mr. McFarlane rich, he continued. I also talked to the old woman McFarlane spoke of. She said that she let him in about 9:30 and then went to bed. She did think the clothing found at the fire was Mr. Oldacre's, but I felt there was something she wasn't telling me. There was one more thing I saw where Oldacre was paying a man named Mr. Cornelius, but I don't know why. No one seems to know him, but this is why there was very little money in the bank book. Holmes then looked sad and said, I'm afraid the facts tell Lestrade that McFarlane did this crime and he will be hung for it. I just don't know how to stop it. I went to bed after we finished talking, but I don't think Holmes slept any that night. I woke up early and found Holmes reading the newspaper with a letter from Lestrade on the table. He asked Holmes to come to Norwood as soon as possible. He also wrote he had discovered a new fact which showed for sure that McFarlane killed Oldacre. I believe that Lestrade is very pleased with himself. He thinks that for once he has solved the case without me, Holmes said. I must go to Norwood at once. Watson, will you come with me? I think I am going to need a friend today. When we arrived at Oldacre's house, Lestrade was standing outside waiting for us. He looked very happy. Well, Holmes, he said, have you found your thief yet? No, I am afraid I haven't found anything yet, Holmes answered. Well, I have, Lestrade said, smiling.